Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. Continuing on with college football week 10. We're on to Wednesday night. Got two games here, both Conference USA games. One good one, one not so much. We're going to go through them both. Let's do it.
Quick update. So Tuesday night, not looking like a good one. I'm 0-2 so far. New Mexico State. Not only did Jenkins come back from injury, he had his best game of the season. 340 yards, 4 touchdowns. Got it at plus 10, closed at plus 7. Didn't even come close. So I lost that one. Timberwolves lost outright. Dallas on a travel spot in a back-to-back. T-Wolves lost outright. I need Pelicans. If I get Pelicans, at least it'll be a 1-2 night. But looking like definitely going to be a losing night. Hopefully not an 0-3 night.
Welcome to the SWUS. The SWUS. SWUS. Hey, get the SWUS.
All right, first up, Jacksonville State on the road at Liberty. Liberty laying 2.5 points. This line was at 1.5, so it looks like it's been bought up a little bit. Total sitting at 63.5 pretty much across the board. Let's take a look at the pie charts, and according to the data, tickets coming in about 50-50, maybe slightly leaning towards Jacksonville State, with the money on the Liberty side over 65%. As I always say, take this data with a grain of salt. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start with the fact that Liberty handled Jacksonville State on their home field last year in their first year in the FBS. 31-13 was the final score. It was week 7 of last year. As we know, both these teams a lot different this year. Well, Jacksonville State's a lot different this year. Liberty has pretty much the same makeup of a team. They're just not playing as well. It's a very similar team. The production's just been a little different. But let's start with the Jacksonville State offense. As we know, this is an offense that wants to run the ball. They're 7th in run frequency so far this year. That's a challenge, because they're matched up against a Liberty defense that hasn't been run on at all. On the season, they're allowing just 3.22 yards per carry, 37.8% success rate per rush, under 98 rushing yards allowed per game. So nobody has been able to run the ball in Liberty yet this year. That being said, look at their opponents. New Mexico State, that was early in the season before they started getting it together. They were terrible early in the season. An FCS program. UTEP, not only is that a passing offense, but it's a terrible offense. That's one of the worst rushing offenses in the country. ECU can't run the ball at all. App State's a mess, passing offense also. FIU, passing offense, no run game whatsoever. And Kennesaw State, one of the worst offenses we've ever seen, although they did just beat this Liberty team. So Liberty's been racking up these excellent defensive numbers against the run. They haven't seen a single half-decent rushing attack, which is why when you pull up this graphic here, look at Liberty's numbers against the run. 11th in the country in yards per carry allowed, 35th in success rate per rush, just 103rd in effective rush. The schedule-adjusted metrics are not respecting this Liberty defense. If you look at all the raw data around those numbers, it looks excellent here for Liberty's defense. 15th in yards per play, 30th in success rate, 20th in PPA. Against the pass, 49th, 41st. But the three schedule-adjusted metrics, 103rd in effective rush, 120th in effective pass, 103rd in DFVI. And this Jacksonville State rushing attack will be by far their toughest opponent, and it's actually not even close in terms of the Liberty defense. Jacksonville State on the ground this year, we mentioned before, this is an offense that wants to run the ball. They're good at it. 4th in the country in yards per carry, 20th in success rate per rush, 14th in effective rush. So this will be by far Liberty's toughest test. Not to mention, Jacksonville State just seems to be getting it going on the ground. In their first 3 games, 130.7 rushing yards per game, 36.1% success rate per rush, 4.17 yards per carry. In their 4 games since then, they're averaging almost 7 yards per carry, 55.3% success rate per rush, over 357 rushing yards per game. But what do you notice about this graphic? Look at the opponents. Those are 4 awful defenses. I'm willing to guess, without even looking, that those 4 defenses, Southern Miss, Kennesaw State, New Mexico State, Middle Tennessee, they're probably all in the bottom 20 of the country. So Jacksonville State, yeah, they're racking up some elite rushing yards against nobody, against terrible defenses, which puts us in an extremely difficult position because we have the Liberty defense racking up elite run defense numbers against terrible rushing attacks, and then we have the Jacksonville State run game racking up these elite rushing numbers against terrible run defenses. So in terms of making a prediction, I mean, those are really tough data points to work with. This is going to be the biggest test by far for both sides. So really tough to make a call there. I will say, I don't know what to do with this data right here. In the last 2 games, Liberty's been getting thrown on by FIU. Okay, with Jenkins, that's a little understandable. But Kennesaw State, Maybe they were just unprepared. I really don't even know how to explain this. But in the last 2 games, Liberty's allowing over 8.9 yards per pass attempt, 43% success rate per dropback, 217 passing yards per game. Struggling to defend the pass against FIU and Kennesaw State. And Jacksonville State, yes, they've played some terrible defenses, but they've been throwing the ball too. Over 10 yards per pass attempt, over 46% success rate per dropback, over 214 passing yards per game. Yes, this is an offense that wants to run the ball, but given the opportunity, Huff is capable of making throws. So based on the data we have, I think we have to lean towards Jacksonville State winning this battle. I think Jacksonville State should be able to move the ball in Liberty. But before you go take that plus 2.5 with Jacksonville State, we got to flip it around and look at the other side. And this is where we get to the weakness of the Jacksonville State team. The defense looking nothing like the defense of last year. Just 74th in the country in yards per play allowed, 110th in success rate. Struggling a bit against the run, which is crazy because they were so good against the run last year. Look at their numbers against the pass. 102nd in yards per pass attempt, 86 in success rate per dropback, 118th in effective pass. That one's a little more believable because they were awful against the pass last year as well. But last year they were elite against the run, and that just hasn't been the case this year, which is not good news when you're on the road at Liberty, because as we know, dating back to last season, Salter, Cooley, I mean, these guys want to run the ball, and they're very good at it. They're 19th in the country in yards per carry, 10th in success rate per rush, 44th in effective rush. Passing numbers look pretty efficient. They're just 101st in effective pass because they really don't drop back to pass much, but still 43rd, 51st. This Liberty offense sitting at 61st in OFEI. Now, something we do have to point out about the Jacksonville State defense, they got off to a little bit of a slow start that may be skewing their numbers a bit. If you look at their first 2 games against Coastal Carolina and Louisville, they were allowing 52 points per game, 56% success rate, almost 8 yards per play. Terrible defensive numbers. They've really shored things up in the last 5 games. Just 20.2 points per game allowed, 40.1% success rate, down at 5 yards per play. Defense has looked much better. That being said, look at the opponents. Maybe that explains it. They played some really bad offenses here. Kennesaw State, New Mexico State's a mess. They can run the ball a little bit, but they're a mess. Middle Tennessee, Vadiato looks lost this year. Southern Miss, Eastern Michigan. I mean, they've played some really bad offenses. Going on the road to try to make stops against this Liberty offense is a different kind of animal. I know Liberty hasn't really lived up to the expectations so far this year, but at home, they're still averaging 33.8 points per game, over 50% success rate, over 6.3 yards per play. So the idea that this Liberty offense has been bad, that's crazy. I mean, they've been just fine. They just haven't been quite as good as last year. And another thing I found here, check this out. So Jacksonville State against the pass, their numbers on the year don't look that bad, but they're all the way back at, I think it's 118th in effective pass. So I was looking at the numbers like, how is this team rated as such a bad pass defense when the numbers don't even look that bad? And I figured out why. In these 3 games here, they have elite numbers against the pass. Southern Miss, Kennesaw State, New Mexico State. New Mexico State only runs the ball and the offense is a mess. Kennesaw State, the worst passing offense maybe we've ever seen, and Southern Miss. In those 3 games, they're allowing just 119 passing yards per game, 25.5% success rate per dropback, 5.43 yards per pass attempt. Elite numbers against the pass in these 3 games. Look what happened in the games where they played somebody that actually has a quarterback. Coastal Carolina has Vasco, Louisville, Tyler Shuck. Eastern Michigan has Cole Snyder. Middle Tennessee, Nick Vadiato. In the 4 games against opponents that actually have a quarterback, they've gotten cooked through the air, looking just like what was happening with Jacksonville State's defense last year against the pass, allowing over 306 passing yards per game, 9.9 yards per pass attempt, 51.6% success rate per dropback. So even though they've had a few elite games in there against offenses that can't throw the ball, this is still a bad passing defense. And yeah, Liberty hasn't looked great throwing the football in their last few games, 6.67 yards per attempt, but still 44.5% success rate per dropback, over 184 passing yards per game. We know Salter can make plays through the air. We've seen it last year. So even though they have not lived up to our expectations this year, I still don't think there's any reason to doubt Liberty moving the ball in this game, which is why I bet Liberty. I laid the 2 points. I think based on the numbers we have from this season, Jacksonville State at plus 2.5 might be worth a look. But personally, I'm taking into account what I know this Liberty team is capable of. I know maybe that's probably not the smartest way to look at it, but this Liberty team, I mean, based on this year, okay, I understand how they're laying less than a field goal, but if you include last year as a sample size and what we know this team's capable of, they should be laying more than 3 here. So I'm banking on some of last year's Liberty coming back for one of the biggest games of the year. I'm laying the 2. I already bet this. Liberty -2. Next game. Kennesaw State on the road at Western Kentucky. Another Kennesaw State game. Hilltoppers laying 24.5 points at home. Total sitting at 49 or 49.5, depending on your sports book. Take a look at the pie charts, and according to the data, over 80% of the tickets coming in on Kennesaw State, but over 70% of the money coming in on Western Kentucky. As I always say, take this data with a grain of salt. So I'll get into this matchup briefly. Full disclosure, I'm making this very clear because apparently this wasn't heard last time. I'm not betting this mess. This is a nightmare. I mean, you got a Kennesaw State offense that wants to run the ball. They're 6th in run frequency. They're up against a Western Kentucky defense that isn't particularly good, but they're actually pretty strong against the run. 56 in yards per carry allowed, 86 in success rate per rush, 56 in effective rush. They've been awful against the pass this year, Western Kentucky. They've been getting thrown on, but Kennesaw State has had the worst passing attack in college football until last week, where they threw for 189 yards, 9.5 yards per pass attempt, 42.9% success rate per dropback. I mean, what do we take away from this? Can Kennesaw State throw the ball now? Because in their 4 games before that, against 4 terrible defenses, mind you, San Jose State, Jacksonville State's terrible against the pass, Middle Tennessee State awful against the pass, and an FCS opponent, just 4.58 yards per pass attempt, 27.6% success rate per dropback. So this Kennesaw State offense was putting up historically bad passing numbers against terrible pass defenses. So, yeah, I mean, they made some throws against Liberty. I'm not letting that trick me into thinking Kennesaw State has any sort of a formidable passing attack, because they haven't all year. And Western Kentucky, like I said, decently strong against the run. So, I mean, they should struggle to move the ball in this one. This is the worst offense in college football. And on the other side, we have Western Kentucky's offense, the best passing attack in Conference USA, and I don't even think it's close. They're 30th in the country in yards per pass attempt, 49th in success rate per dropback, 27th in effective pass. Since Velkamp was named starting quarterback 5 games ago, they're averaging 300 passing yards per game, over 9.2 yards per attempt, almost a 50% success rate per dropback. So look, I mean, if you're a believer in what Kennesaw State did last week, maybe take the points. I don't know. It would only be Western Kentucky for me. On paper, Western Kentucky should win this by 4 touchdowns plus. So it would only be Western Kentucky minus 24. I'm not betting this. Let me make that clear. I am not betting this. So if you take Western Kentucky because you saw this graphic on the screen and it loses and you come back in the comments complaining about it, I'm going to lose it. I'm not betting this game. It's terrible. Live show, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We'll go through these games. We'll go through the NBA slate. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. If you want to see all the bets I currently have open, head over to KyleKirms.com and click on Open Bets. You'll see all mine as well as everyone on the staff here. Let's have ourselves a good one. Please remember to bet responsibly. Talk to you later.